This is the fourth and last session of these reopening webinars where we're sharing our most recent thinking when it comes to how we plan to open up our schools this fall. This is the second round of these sessions. We all talked back in June, and I see many names on the call this morning who were with us back in June. And at the time, we were sharing all the ways in which we were thinking we may need to open up schools. I think we were planning for 5 or 6 different scenarios at that time. We had no guidance from our state. We had not heard from the governor about whether or not we could reopen. Since then, we have heard from our governor, and we are able to open up schools, and we have received some guidance. It was about a week ago when we received that 145 pages of guidance. We've been working through that. We need to put together a plan to get to our New York State Department of Education by the 31st of July. In a few more days, we need to get a plan, a very detailed plan, which is up to over 200 pages now. We will be sharing that plan with the community. Today is intended to give you special thinking, a quick overview of what we're thinking to gather your questions as we continue to finalize our approaches to this. Well, using that word finalize is probably not a good word to use. As I've learned over the last 4 months, 5 months, things change very significantly almost every day. But as of today, we think we're pretty solid about how we can open up schools based on a formula that we will share with you later. We said back in June that we would be reopening our schools, and our survey data revealed that folks wanted us to be innovative in our reopening of schools. They wanted us to be thoughtful, and we feel like our plan is just that. On the screen now, you'll see our vision and mission. You've probably seen that T-shirt and that logo everywhere, in the grocery stores and hardware stores. It's more than just a slogan and a logo for us. It is our vision and mission, and we really build around it. When we say thinking, we know that's about being creative, solving complex problems like the ones we're facing right now. But even more so, it's about collaborating with the significant diversity that exists in our community. We need to think to do that. We need to recognize one another's blind spots. You will see in our reopening planning how we plan to do that in a way that's engaging and educating our young people in 2020. Our mission statement: to achieve that vision, we must do this over and over again. You will see over and over again in our plan how we hope to engage young people at high levels. This plan is not about compliance. This plan is about significant high levels of engagement. You will see in this plan how we are being innovative in our approaches to teaching and learning. When we say educate, we are doing that in the most contemporary and flexible way. When we say empower, you will see the toughest decisions to make has been around how do we honor voice and choice. The toughest decision of my career was back on March 13th when we needed to close our school buildings. We said then that our behaviors in the coming weeks, in the coming months, would dictate whether or not we could, and if we could, reopen our schools. Because of our behaviors and because of our thinking, we are in a place, and we'll talk about that formula again, and we are in good standing right now in our state, in good standing when it comes to our country, as far as where we are with this deadly virus. And our governor has given us the go-ahead to open up our schools. And we say that we're going to do that in a way where we provide voice and choice. And I know the folks here in our community, you've been reading the plans and the thinking of superintendents and schools all over the country. And we feel we have a rather unique plan because we've stuck to our values when it comes to voice and choice. What does that look like? You see, we are offering choice to our families. We're saying to folks, you can choose an in-person experience or you can choose a distance learning experience, both 5 days a week. And you can make that choice based on the medical needs of your family, whether you have a vulnerable household member or a young person who has a medical need. You can make that choice based on your preference. Some of you loved the digital virtual experience last spring and felt like it met the needs of your young people. And you want that to continue, and you will have that option. Some, quite frankly, just aren't comfortable having young people come into a school building or into any building right now, and we will honor that. There are many who need the in-person experience, and we're going to talk more about that in a second, who have been begging us for it, and we are prepared to offer that as well. In-person will be Monday through Friday during the regular school day, 8 to 2 at the elementary level. I believe it's 8:55 to 3:20 at the secondary level. We will, and you'll hear much more about this, we will be practicing physical distancing. We will be adhering to the CDC guidelines and our state guidelines. Transportation will be limited, but we plan to offer transportation. And this is one area where I'm going to be asking our community for support and help. We need, and for the 10 years I've been here, we've been saying to folks, put your kid on the bus. We have a great transportation system. Have them ride the bus. Now I'm sort of shifting. If you can drive your child to school, if you can drive to school, we are going to be inviting you to do just that. The distance learning experience, we learned much last spring about how to do this. We are going to be offering significant professional development for the rest of the summer and going into next year. Our educators are getting better and better each day. We are going to be providing a robust distance learning experience Monday through Friday with daily connections. And we will work hard to ensure that our young people have the connections and the devices and the tools to engage in that way. A form is going to be going out ASAP as of tomorrow. We plan to send to you a survey, both digitally and in paper, to get a sense of where you are. Which of these options do you wish to choose? Now, I know we live in Ithaca, New York, and we honor voice and choice. We are asking for folks to commit to what you decide and what you put down on that document. But we also know that things change, and we will be flexible. So it's not, you're not signing off for an entire year. And you know me well, we'll treat this on a case-by-case basis. Just give us a call if you wish to change your minds. But we need to plan. We need to plan for transportation. We need to plan for sanitation. We need to plan for a class list. We need to plan for staffing. We have a lot of planning to do in the coming, I can't even say weeks anymore, Ms. Talk. It's almost days. We have a lot of planning to do in the coming days to get things up and running, but we're confident we can do so. So again, why are we doing this? You've heard some of those readings so far, but again, we are adhering to the New York State Education Departments and New York State Department of Health guidelines. We spent a lot of time navigating through those guidelines. We've talked to a lot of folks. And at the core of that is this formula that our governor rolled out a few weeks ago that spoke to how schools, if schools get reopened and what the parameters are. Ms. Burke, quickly, could you speak to that formula that Governor Cuomo has put in front of us in which to operate under?
Yes, I'm happy to. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. My name is Carrie Burke. I'm the Coordinator of Health Services and Wellness for the district. So per Governor Cuomo, schools open in a region, in our case, the Southern Tier region, if we are in phase 4 and the daily infection rate is 5% or lower using a 14-day average. Conversely, schools must close if the regional infection rate, again, here in the Southern Tier, is greater than 9% using a 7-day average after August 1st.
Thank you. If you have additional questions, we have a frequently asked questions site on our website, and you can go there, and that formula is detailed there along with many other questions. Why are we providing the in-person experience? One, because of the formula allows for us to do, and also because we know that in-person experience is the one we're good at. We have much work to do to be excellent, but we're pretty good at it. We've been doing it for 2 centuries now, and we want to continue to offer that. And again, we're getting even better with our distance learning approaches as well. We know there are many young people, there are many families, all of our young people and all of our families depend on the in-person experience for healthy development and their social emotional health. We feel like we can offer that, and we will be offering that in the fall. We have 1 million square feet. That's been a frequently asked question. How are we doing this? How are we going to distance young people? We have the space to do this. We've been walking our spaces for months now. We've been rearranging furniture, taking furniture out, looking at how can we have our young people in these spaces and physically distance in a way where it's not institutional or producing an environment that's not consistent with our vision and mission. Our spaces will be culturally responsive. They will allow for some collaboration, and we can do this with the amount of square feet we have. And we wish to thank our community for your investment in our infrastructure over the years, which has allowed us to be in the space today. Many of you have spoken to us about your childcare challenges. In addition to the lack of voice and choice provided from my perspective, when we're talking about a blended experience across our country right now, folks are saying, that you can come to school on Mondays and Thursdays, or you can come in the mornings or the afternoons. As we reflected on this, that was not offering choice. That was us telling you when you would come to school. That blended approach was going to be tough, not only as we look at and think about our vision and mission, but for families who are struggling or challenged with childcare right now. So again, we are offering a 5-day experience, Monday through Friday. And again, input for stakeholders, we've heard from many, many folks, thousands of emails, thousands of Let's Talk entries, many stakeholder groups, an amazing task force that included educators, folks who represent all of the bargaining units in our school district, and Ms. Talker will speak to that a little bit later, but we've heard from many folks over the past few months, and this plan has been informed by that type of collaboration. With that, I'm going to turn over to Ms. Talker to speak to the 4 pillars of our reopening plan.
Good morning, everyone. For those of you who joined a little late, my name is Lily Talcott, and I have the honor of serving as your Deputy Superintendent. So how are we planning to welcome students and staff back to our digital and physical spaces? Well, through very intentional, very collaborative, as Dr. Brown said, planning among and within 4 interconnected and overlapping pillars. So our first is culture. The next is physical and environmental health and safety. The third is social, emotional, and academic learning. And the fourth is communication. We're looking at continuing many of the elements of our culture of love within the Ithaca City School District, and of course, implementing a lot of new health and safety measures. We understand that we will all be in a place where we want to engineer environments that are both affirming and are also safe, and that we all need to act individually and think collectively, think about that collective good. So the tenets of a culture of love are listed here in white, and some of our new health and safety practices that are really going to shift some of how our culture works are listed here in yellow. So face coverings. We will all be wearing face coverings, masks, and there will be few exceptions, right, for those whose physical or mental health dictates that they simply cannot wear them, but and there will be, of course, mask breaks, but we will be wearing masks, and when that will certainly require all of us to be very caring, not only about ourselves, but also about our community. We'll be wearing those masks when we can't physical distance, right, or engage in social distancing. That 6 feet of separation is going to require all of us to be very committed. And we'll have to remind ourselves and each other over and over. Screening, daily screening. We are all going to need to be honest about that. So each morning, we are all going to, and many of us who come into work now, or all of us who come into work now in the Ithaca City School District, we wake up, we take our temperatures, and we fill out our daily health screener and indicate, whether we have, whether our temperature is over 100, and some other key questions. Hand washing is going to require a great deal of patience, and we are going to need to be selfless. It takes 20 seconds, right? We sing happy birthday twice every time we wash our hands. And so each of us is going to really need to take the time and be patient with ourselves and with each other as we adhere to good hand hygiene practices. And there are going to be times when some of us forget or in a space when we feel like we cannot adhere to these new cultural norms that we're cultivating. And so as a school district, we're going to engage in restorative practices. What does that mean? That means if, say, a student is feeling like they can't wear a mask at that moment, then we are going to need to engage in conversation with them, find out why, what's going on, and then find solutions together in order to protect the folks within our communities. As we make decisions about how we're building this culture, we know that each decision is critically important, right? We don't want to create an institutional or a prison-like culture here. We want to create a culture that is affirming, is anti-racist, and continues this culture of love here in the Ithaca City School District. Our second pillar is physical and environmental health and safety. A healthy, safe, and supportive environment is most conducive to effective teaching and learning. Our policies, practices, and procedures are designed to support the health and safety of our school community. Reopening school requires a combination of new and enhanced measures at the individual building and district level. Guidance from the state and federal agencies includes a number of prevention and mitigation strategies, which in combination can reduce the risk of COVID-19 transmission. Much of the information you've heard today focuses on individual behaviors, and we are planning to support those in every way possible, including culture, which Ms. Talcott just discussed, but also ensuring that there are adequate supplies of masks, tissues, soap and water, hand sanitizer. It should be noted we're giving equal or even greater weight to our practices and systems. So rethinking the way that students and staff do school. We'll be encouraging students and staff to stay home when they're sick. There's no more toughing it out. We will be limiting the number of non-essential visitors, volunteers, or activities that bring in outside groups. We're going to work to keep student and staff grouping static. This term you probably heard of as cohorting, by having the same group of children stay with the same staff. We'll be limiting our gatherings and events and extracurricular activities to those that can support physical distancing and hygiene. And of course, we'll be implementing, or have implemented, and we'll be continuing to implement our daily health screening for staff, students, and any visitors. We're also considering our physical environment. So how we are engaging with our school environments and the systems within them. This includes reconfiguring our classrooms to maintain physical distancing. It includes our building and classroom cleaning, disinfecting, and cleaning protocols with special attention to those high-touch surfaces, high-risk locations like the health office or any other common areas like the lunchroom, and shared objects like school supplies or other manipulatives. And then ensuring our ventilation systems are operating properly and increasing the circulation of outdoor air. It's important to note that regardless of what procedures we are putting in place, it's not possible to reduce the risk of COVID transmission to zero in schools. This has been a collective effort. We have closely read over and consulted with guidance from the Department of Health, the Education Department, and the Department of Transportation. We've not limited ourselves to the written guidance provided by our state and federal agencies. We have sought out information in our consulting with subject matter experts within and outside the district. This includes our local county public health director, Frank Krupa, Dr. Dindali, a pediatrician by training who serves as our medical director and is also on the County Board of Health. We've looked at guidance from the American Society of Heating, Refrigeration, and Air Conditioning Engineers. We're in the midst of an on-site consultation with Trane, which is an HVAC manufacturer, around our heating and ventilation systems. And we've leveraged the expertise of individuals at Tetra Tech who are spearheading our capital project to provide on-site consultation and support as well. And we've been reviewing guidance available from nonprofit entities like the New York State Public High School Athletic Association, which is the governing body of interscholastic sports. And finally, we've consulted with our supervisors and frontline staff. They have deep knowledge of regulations, best practices, operations, stakeholders from facilities, child nutrition, transportation, school health, and extracurricular areas like the performing arts and athletics. So we have not engaged in this work alone, and we are deeply grateful for the time and expertise of those both within our district and outside our district that have helped to formulate our plans for reopening.
Social, emotional, and academic learning is really the cornerstone of what we do here in the Ithaca City School District. We start very intentionally with the words social emotional, because we know that our students and our staff, everyone throughout the Ithaca City School District community, are going to be re-entering our spaces, both virtually and in person, having had very wide experiences with a global pandemic, with protests calling for racial justice that are continuing daily, and we need to simply have time to process, understand, and take care of each other and ourselves. Then, of course, we engage in deep academic learning as well. We'll continue to address the social emotional needs of folks as we engage in that learning as well. So there are some common foundational elements that will remain the same, whether we're in digital spaces or in physical spaces. We'll continue our commitment to social emotional learning through the ruler work as we collaborate with Yale. Innovation and case studies or project-based learning units will continue. Those are those units where we begin with rigorous academic standards and build out authentic projects and products that allow students to engage in work that mirrors that of real historians and scientists. We'll continue to hone our culturally responsive practices as we work to validate and affirm our young people and also help them build and bridge towards school-based culture. We'll continue our inclusion practices, the ways in which we design our learning experiences and our physical spaces to universally address the wide range of needs and strengths within our learning community. We'll continue our commitment to anti-racist teaching and anti-marginalization curriculum that we've started several years back. Some newer elements are, of course, enhanced partnerships. Families, caregivers are now facilitators of learning, much more so than the world has ever asked them, right? And so we know that those relationships, they've always been vitally important, and now they're even more so. And blended learning, as Dr. Brown said earlier on, there's much that we as a community have to learn around the ways in which we design learning to very easily transition to a digital platform. So what will distance learning look like in the fall? Well, it's going to be markedly different. An educator task force, as Dr. Brown said, came together, a wonderful group of teachers, education support professionals, and substitute teachers, and they worked through a number of the scenarios. They came up with a great plan around distance learning. And you'll see that there are some things that are in common throughout each of the levels. So some of those common threads include synchronous or real-time live instruction on these kinds of digital platforms, and asynchronous or anytime learning that can be done at night or early in the morning and can be done anywhere. We also see a common thread of small group instructions. One of the things that teachers were really clear about, families were really clear about, kids were really clear about was having smaller groups of students work together over time is extremely helpful in the distance learning world. So a teacher may work with a group of 5 students for 30 minutes and then work with another group of 5 students for another 30 minutes, et cetera, et cetera. And at the middle school level, I think it's important to note that we're looking at a cohort model where students who are heterogeneously grouped or grouped not according to quote unquote academic level will be learning together in spaces. I think it's important to note that the New York State Education Department guidance that came out, that 145-page document that Dr. Brown mentioned, also indicated that we need to have very clear plans, which we had already been developing around these areas. Of course, special education, and we are going to continue to work very closely with families in order to meet the individualized education plans and Section 504 accommodation plans that students may have. Of course, in in-person environments, we're very adept at doing that, and throughout the spring, we certainly collaborated with families and students in order to figure out ways to make those accommodations and modifications and services really work in the digital environment as well. Professional development, the state asks us to have a very clear professional development plan, which we do. It begins in a couple of weeks, and it's focused on 3 key areas: anti-racist teaching, culturally responsive practices, blended learning approaches, and integrated social emotional learning. English as a new language is also something that we're, of course, working very hard at determining for the distance learning environment. And again, collaborating with families and with educators in order to make that work for young people is going to be key. And then there's special accommodations and special attention, of course, in early childhood, the arts, for technology, ensuring that every young person has a device, which they will, physical education, and ensuring that we have that regular and substantive daily interaction. We recognize how essential communication is to our planning efforts for reopening. It is our 4th pillar, but it is a key component of the areas we have already discussed. Our communication efforts reflect a spectrum of engagement, from information sharing to information gathering to consultation and participation. We have poured over the information that our students, staff, and caregivers shared in surveys completed in June. We held information sessions in late June to share with you our approach to reopening and reopening planning in advance of receiving any guidance. Our leadership has been invited to participate in the conversation around school reopening in local and national media outlets. We've convened our teachers, supervisors, and frontline staff through the task force and work groups designed to leverage the knowledge that they've acquired during our recent experience with school closure, paired with your feedback and insights, and the available guidance to craft proposals which attend to health, safety, instruction, and all the other things we do as a school community. We review every question, comment, and proposal you have submitted through our Let's Talk application, and we work to respond to them in a timely manner. We are conducting focus groups to further our understanding and give context to the information, questions, and concerns you have shared. We invite you to visit our Reopen ICSD webpage, where you can find information on future sessions, links to current guidance, and a link to an FAQs page, which we continue to update on a regular basis. Looking ahead, we are anticipating your engagement as active partners, collaborating to create shared environments, learning environments which are safe, student affirming, and actively anti-racist, and contribute to our shared commitment to a culture of love. With that, we are happy to take your questions. If you could please type them into the chat, we will try to get to as many as possible. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. This is always my favorite part, y'all, because we learn so much from our community. The questions are coming in, and again, questions that we haven't received before. I'm going to try to get to all of them in the next 15 minutes or so, and we call this our lightning round. And so before we get started, there is a theme around face masks and how we handle this. And Ms. Talcott, I'm going to ask you in a second to get even more granular on what it's going to look like in our spaces. But many of the questions today and over the past couple of sessions have come in, and they've led with what will we do with young people who don't wear them. And I'm going to be absolutely clear here around our thinking associated with this. We are a community, just like we're a larger community. And just like when folks aren't wearing masks in the grocery store or the hardware store, you know, our community has handled that. Yeah, there will be young people who will take a mask off. There will be young people who are going to probably refuse to wear them. We will handle that in a loving way. What we aren't going to do, and some of the questions lead with discipline, and how will we discipline? How long will the suspensions be? We don't need another reason to suspend young people here. Quite frankly, we are working very hard to get young people back into our spaces. And part of the innovations I'm hoping will come from this, not just here, but all over the country, is maybe we stop suspending young people. I think we've learned a lot about that. It has never worked, and I don't see it working in the foreseeable future either. So as we talk about how we will handle young people who don't wear a mask or who do other things in our schools, let's change the language to be much more loving and restorative. I'm here to tell you that when young people, we'll have that conversation with them. We are expecting young people to wear the mask. There will be times for mask breaks. There will be time where young people are frustrated with the mask and they're going to take them off. Those will be conversations. They won't be suspensions. And if you have questions, want to talk about that more, reach out to me and we can talk more about why I think that and how we will handle it. Ms. Talcott, anything else about, and particularly around, is it a face mask or a face shield? Can a young person wear a face shield versus a face mask? Any more information you can provide about face masks here?
Great. Yeah, so the New York State Education Department has guidance, obviously, that indicates essentially if students are unable to physically distance, right, maintain that 6 feet of distance between each other, that they should be wearing face coverings. A few things I think to note here. The slide that we show toward the beginning, the culture slide, those are actually ICSD students who are wearing masks that they had created. So their art teacher had sent them those masks and art materials, and then they created, it was a part of an assignment, they created these masks as an authentic expression of themselves, of their identity. And we certainly believe that if students feel as if they're able to express themselves through their masks, they're actually more likely to keep them on, right? I think another important thing to note is, folks wonder very, very brightly what actually might happen, right? Will the principal be called? What then happens, right? And so, for example, I could imagine if I were back in a school building as a school principal, I may get a call in order to help a student who may not be wearing their mask. Either something's going on with them or they're refusing to do it, et cetera. And then that situation may look like me pulling them aside, engaging in the conversation, finding out why, what's going on, is it uncomfortable, are they not interested in doing it, why are they not interested in doing it, and really getting to the bottom of it. And also helping them understand why it's actually so important. It's vital that they wear it. And then working together in order to find solutions in order to then reintegrate the student into the environment. So those are some of the logistics of how those restorative practices will actually work. Carrie, do you want to talk about specific types of masks?
I'd be happy to, yes. We will be offering masks to anyone who needs one. They include surgical masks, the ones you've probably seen most folks wearing or healthcare professionals wearing. They will also include clear face masks. We understand some students who will, students and staff who will require the clear face mask for clear communication or to access services such as speech therapy. Face shields will also be available. They are appropriate for use when physical distancing is in place because they don't have that perfect seal or cover like a mask does, but certainly face shields will be another option. I think that's it for face coverings.
Yeah. Yes, again, I frequently ask questions address this as well, and we can talk more at another time. A lot of questions about what happens if someone tests positive in a school, there's an outbreak at a school, or what about if Ithaca has an outbreak and the rest of the Southern Tier is fine? Ms. Burke, you want to speak to that?
Yes, yes. I think first and foremost, it's important to note that we have a responsibility to maintain the privacy and confidentiality of anyone who is seeking care or undergoing testing. So in the event that someone tests positive in the school environment, we work very closely with the Tompkins County Health Department to support their efforts around contact tracing. So we may share information about how to get a hold of persons who've been identified as part of that contact investigation so that the Tompkins County Health Department can reach out to those individuals. Questions about quarantine and isolation and testing really are the purview of the health department and health professionals. If someone in fact has to be quarantined, we will be notified by the health department when that quarantine date ends. The decision about who gets quarantined will be dependent upon a number of factors. For example, we're looking at cohorting at many levels. And so with that, there may be the opportunity for us to just quarantine or ask a classroom to quarantine, or maybe a segment of a building rather than an entire building. We are monitoring rates of transmission both here in the county and in the region. And again, we're doing that in close communication with the county health department. We are also working with them to identify triggers that might require reducing in-person attendance or even school closure that are independent of the governor's guidelines, which speak to the 9% test positivity rate in a region. So certainly we are sensitive to what's happening in our local community around transmission, isolation, and quarantine.
Thank you. Ms. Talcott, how do we see cohorts working with IEP and 504 services and young people with special needs?
Absolutely. So as much as possible, ensuring that services are delivered within the classroom is going to be key. And also being very clear with staffing to, again, limit the amount of potential transmission among staff to different cohorts, right? So we'll be looking at particular grade levels, folks servicing particular grade levels, and really trying to keep it to a minimum there. And our new special education director, Jen Gondak, has been excellent. She's poured over the research she attends every webinar and reads every piece of guidance and research in terms of supporting students in this COVID era, and both in terms of our in-person spaces and how we're providing those, again, really collaborating closely with students and with families and with service providers. And then also in the digital spaces, so things like teletherapy has been very successful for a number of families, and a huge shout out to our providers who have been extremely innovative and have been really pushing themselves to find new ways in order to service students in the digital environment. And also shout out to students and families who have made that work too. It's been really remarkable.
Thank you, Ms. Talcott. And again, folks, we do anticipate our teachers being either a digital educator or in-person educator. There may be some instances where an educator may do both, but we don't see a person having double the workload teaching in the digital space and also in the physical space. Outdoor spaces, that one has come up a lot. And specifically around what's up with these tents. So Ms. Talcott, you want to talk about what we've learned about tents, and then how we also look to use our outdoor spaces now and into the future?
Sure. A lot of our schools have for many years been exploring the ways in which teaching and learning can occur outside. And so we have, some of our schools have wilderness campuses and amphitheaters, newly built butterfly gardens, and a lot of the work that's done outdoors is associated with some of our excellent project-based learning or case study unit work as well. Obviously, we're going to continue to support folks utilizing those outdoor spaces, and again, continuing to encourage and find ways to use those spaces creatively. In terms of tents, there's very extensive guidance from the New York State Education Department regarding tent setup. We need to consult with architects. We need to ensure that it meets fire code and has its own fire alarm system, et cetera. It does need to have its own ventilation system, et cetera. And the timeline for that, frankly, just looks too tight. So we have talked with Tetra Tech about this as well, a great architecture firm. And so again, we're looking at other creative solutions, so possibly things like canopies and other things in order to guard us from the elements.
Thank you. Many questions about transitions, morning drop-off, pickup. We plan to stagger our entry and pickup times to allow for not as many people to be there at one point. We're also going to be staggering our transition times at the high school and at the secondary schools and at the elementary schools as well. Sports and athletics, athletics and PE and other co-curricular programs. Ms. Burke, I know you've met with a lot of folks there. Talk about what sports may look like, what athletics may look like, fine and performing arts programs may look like in the fall.
Yes, thank you. So we have received guidance from the state which indicates for those activities that may generate more respiratory droplets, right? So singing being one of them, PE being another, athletics certainly being another area, that they are requiring 12 feet of physical distancing in those activities. Additionally, we are looking at use of our spaces. So thinking very creatively about how we use our outdoor spaces to engage in those activities, be it PE, certainly athletics, as well as performing arts. And also looking to procure and have available to us, I guess, PPE for instruments. So those of you familiar with band know that there are bell covers for instruments. We are also looking at adapted masks, which have a small slit in them so students can play an instrument as well. With respect to athletics, NISPA, the governing body, has indicated that fall sports are delayed. Championships, regional and state championships are canceled for the fall, but until fall sports will not begin until September 21st. If for some reason fall sports are not able to occur within that timeline, NISPA has designed a compressed schedule, which would start in 2021, which is available both as a link through our FAQs page, Reopen ICSD page, as well as on the NISPA website.
Thank you, Ms. Bird. We won't get to all the questions today, folks. Maybe a couple of quick answers to some of these. The in-person experience will be a regular school day, 8 to 2 at the elementary level and 8:55 to 3:20 at the secondary level. The digital experience there will be daily contact and there will be a schedule. You'll need to check in. We'll check in with our schools. Each school will be conducting an information session to give you even more granular, more specific information about what the schedules will look like after conferring with educators in those respective buildings. But yes, we plan for a regular school day for the in-person experience. Some folks are continuing to ask about, am I going to be held to my decision for the rest of the year? No. We plan to ask folks again mid-year or at the end of the first semester. But again, I know I said it, and sometimes this gets me into trouble, particularly with Ms. Talcott. We will treat these on a case-by-case basis. If you have an issue and you want to change your mind, talk to us. Quite frankly, we all may be changing our minds. We're about 30, 40 days away from the opening of school. A lot can happen between now and then. Once school starts, we know that there may be times when we may have to go back into a completely digital experience. Things may stay great and many more folks may choose to be in person. We don't know, but I'm not here to say we're gonna lock anyone into any particular selection. That wouldn't be consistent to our culture and it wouldn't be good for our young people. So please know that. Folks continue to ask for us to be innovative and we're making our best efforts to be innovative. We also know that innovation cannot be decoupled from being uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable right now. We are all uncomfortable right now. We don't know what it's going to look like. We're planning for many scenarios. We are planning for options, but we will learn much through this process. And we're asking for your patience, your forgiveness, and your trust as we do the unprecedented. So yeah, this is going to come together. And it's going to take some time. We all are nervous. We should be. We're in the midst of a global pandemic. And at the same time, we can be excited about welcoming our young people back into spaces, whether that's a digital one or a physical one. We're excited about starting our school district up again. And we also know that's in the midst of some very challenging times for many, many folks here. That's why we're in this together. Again, thank you for joining us early this morning. If you have additional questions, go to Let's Talk. Go to our webpage for the frequently asked questions or send me an email. We're answering a lot of emails and we'll get back to you. And address your questions and your concerns. Thank you so much and have a wonderful day.